In this episode, I'd like to discuss the pandemic, bureaucratic meltdown, or one big large conspiracy. Now, spoiler alert, by the end of this video, I'm going to set out my thinking and my argument, so to speak, that I think it is a massive bureaucratic meltdown. And I'm going to take you through a couple of steps to get there. I'm going to talk about the pandemics in general, talk about bureaucratic meltdowns, and also then my thoughts on conspiracy theories. During this video, I will be referencing 4 or 5 books that have helped me form my opinions, but I will be focusing in on one book in particular, and it's this guy here. It's Meltdown. This book really has a collection of errors done by bureaucratic machines, and I'm going to discuss that later, but those mistakes that have happened in those bureaucracies have led to big disasters. Now, before getting into discussing Meltdown, I just wanted to quickly talk about pandemics. Have pandemics happened before? Yes. Will pandemics happen again? Yes. How many pandemics has the human race faced? At this stage, I'm not sure, but it's probably hundreds. There's a number that we can point to that were quite large. We have, on record, we have one that happened in Athens about 400 BC that's quite famous. We have the Roman Empire had one about 180 AD, all the way through to the Black Death that swept across Europe in the 1400s, and again the London Plague in the 1600s. All the way up to 1918, we have the Spanish flu. That pandemic seems to be the one that is getting mentioned the most because it's the last huge pandemic that really affected the whole world like the current one. Now, the reason why I wanted to start talking about pandemics in general is that they are something that humans have had to deal with on multiple occasions in the past, and we'll have to deal with them again. The book I want to reference for this first part, talking about pandemics, is this book here by Will Durant, Lessons from History. Now, this book doesn't specifically talk about a pandemic, but what it does is it quite clearly sets out that history is a cyclical beast that kind of sort of mirrors the past. And whether that's economical, political, environmental, whatever that might be, this quick book, this small book by Will Durant, really shows that the lessons from history can guide us for the future. And that's why my point again in this first section is we have had to deal with pandemics in the past, we're dealing with one right now, and we're going to be dealing with them in the future again. The human race has to deal with pandemics. But how dangerous and impacting those pandemics can be based on how our large bureaucratic systems react to it. The world itself, if you took all the countries and all the governments, is a massive bureaucratic system. Every individual country is a massive bureaucratic system. And then within each of those countries, there are bureaucratic systems that work all the way down to local government, bureaucratic systems on bureaucratic systems on bureaucratic systems. And all of those systems are affected by a multitude of different cultural and political opinions. Now let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the book Meltdown. And I'm going to bring up a slide here for you to look at. And this slide is about coupling and complexity. Okay, so on the vertical axis you have coupling, and on the horizontal axis you have complexity. So let's look at this. Nuclear power plants stand out. They are very complex and they have a lot of coupling. Now, what is coupling? Coupling means that there's a lot of systems interacting that have to couple together basically to make this work, or that industry work. So we all have a fairly good idea that nuclear power plants are extremely complex systems that have a lot of coupling parts talking to each other that need to work. You've got a lot of different things in here, from power grids to space missions to military adventures. That's a nice way to put it. To universities, to most manufacturings in the first section there, where they've got a little bit of coupling and they're a little bit complex, but most manufacturing isn't that complex. And then you've got that increasing risk that takes it down from small amounts of coupling and complexity all the way through to high complexity and high coupling. Now, the one thing I want to throw at you here is all of these activities or all these industries, they are part of a country. They are part of a country's bureaucratic system. So if a nuclear power plant has high complexity and high coupling, where do you think the logistical and supply chain and the way that a government runs its country, where would you think that is? Would you think it is as high as a nuclear power plant? I would say maybe not quite, but it's going to be quite close to that when it comes to complexity, because countries are extremely complex. Coupling, high coupling. Lots of different industries, lots of different government bodies, millions of people working together. Countries are large bureaucracies that have a lot of complexity to them. Countries can be very slow to react to different situations, and they can make wrong decisions based on the data. Now, one of the examples in the book that I want to talk about, and it's the only example I'm going to bring up to emphasize the point of data. In the book Meltdown, it talks about the unfortunate nuclear disaster that happened in Japan a number of years back. The Fukushima nuclear power plant was hit by a tsunami in 2011. They had a storm wall that was built to, I think, 12 or 13 meters, and the tsunami that hit that day was 15 meters high. Very unfortunate. It was a pretty big disaster. You may remember it. While reading the book sets out that the bureaucratic machine, when they were making their data analysis, they pulled data that showed that the average height of a tsunami that hit Japan was 12 to 13 meters. So what height did they build that wall to? Well, rather than building it to the highest ever tsunami to hit Japan in recorded history, which is 15 meters, they decided to build it to that 12, 13 meter mark. And unfortunately, as I've just mentioned, that tsunami that hit in 2011 was 15 meters high. It was 2 or 3 meters higher than what the wall was built for. Now, this was not a conspiracy theory. This was not someone trying to bring down a nuclear power plant. It was a bureaucratic machine making decisions based on data that ended up being the wrong decisions. Basically, it shows how a small decision made by a group of people on building a wall to an average height ended up being the contributing factor to a massive disaster. It was just a small decision. And I feel like with that chart I brought up earlier, the coupling and the complexity, and you saw where the nuclear power plants were, that how small decisions made by people can affect a massive complex system without even meaning to. And that's going to bring me around to talking about the current COVID-19 response and how certain bureaucratic systems, countries, large organizations have reacted to the pandemic. I'm currently in Canada, and I think Canada and the United States, I'm going to use this as a reference in a second of how two different bureaucratic systems have reacted to it, and the difference of how the message from upper management has filtered down to middle management all the way down to the workers, the population, so to speak. But before I do that, I just want to touch on the United Kingdom, where I grew up. The United Kingdom decided to go against the rest of Europe. Their bureaucratic system made a different decision. They decided to go for herd immunity, and that's what the way they decided to react to the COVID-19 response. Now, within a couple of weeks of doing that, their government made a U-turn, and Britain has been hit quite hard. But again, conspiracy theory, no. Bureaucratic meltdown and a mistake made by a small group of people that is now affecting a large amount of people, a bit like the Fukushima disaster, where a small group of people on the averages and the data made a wrong mistake, calculated it out wrong, and we end up with a meltdown. That's what happened in Britain, and that's kind of what's happening in the United States. The reason why I wanted to talk about Canada and the United States quickly as well, Canada's Prime Minister, like him or not, has really deferred a lot of his decisions to the medical professionals. So let's look at this as an organization. The organization is saying something here, the middle management, the doctors are saying something here, therefore they're flowing that down to the regional managers, the regional doctors, and that information is staying much the same. Pretty much every province in Canada is doing the same thing and reacting in a similar way, and our numbers have been pretty good. In particular, British Columbia, where I live, has been one of the best examples, really in across Europe or North America, of how having to respond, or how they have responded to the pandemic. It's been quite remarkable. Then the United States, a massive bureaucratic machine. Its head office, the White House, is saying two different things. You have the figurehead saying one thing, and then you have the scientists saying another. Then distributing down to their regional managers, the governors. Some of their governors are following what the leader's saying. Some of their governors are following what the scientists are saying. And then we flood down to the population, the workers, and some of those workers in all the states want to follow the instructions from the leader, and then some of those people in those states want to listen to the instructions from the scientists. Then you end up in this kaleidoscope of misdirection. There is no direction at all. There's so much craziness going on in that country. On top of that, America is one of the most individual countries in the world, according to Hofstede's 6 Dimensions. And this causes some problems because not only is it a high individual country, but it's also a low hierarchical country where it's in the middle there. It doesn't, a lot of Americans don't really respect that authority. It's not a very collective society. They want to make decisions on their own. And I'm not going to get too deep into it. All you really need to do is go on the news and just see all the protesting and just the mixed messages that are coming out of the White House and the way different states and governors are reacting to this. I'm not saying who is right and who's wrong in this. I'm just showing you that currently the bureaucratic machine of the United States is in meltdown. I couldn't give you a clue what the United States response is to COVID-19. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, drink bleach, don't drink bleach. I'm referring to each country as a large organization because I feel like as somebody who's worked within a large organization, someone who works in a corporate organization, it's something I can relate to. Now, using the book Meltdown here and also using Hofstede's book here, 6 Dimensions, Culture, Organizations, Cultures, and also referring to spiral dynamics. Spiral dynamics sort of is a model of where each country is in a sort of a actualization and or whether they're collective or individual depending on where they are in the model. And the same with Hofstede's dimensions. And the Meltdown one, the book there, it really just shows how small bureaucratic decisions can end up causing plane crashes and nuclear meltdowns. So a lot of these aren't conspiracy theories. They are mistakes made by a small group of people. A random mistake followed by another random mistake followed by another random mistake creates a massive meltdown over time. And that's what's happening with some countries with the response here. Now, to refer to Hofstede's dimensions, if you actually look at some of the countries that have responded the best to the pandemic, they are collective societies. Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. And some of the countries that have done badly are high in individualism, United Kingdom and America. Spain and Italy are both actually collective societies, and I know they were hit pretty hard, but I feel like they were hit before the world understood really what the virus was. So I don't think their response has been bad. I just think that they were already under attack, so to speak, before the rest of the world and even their own governments were able to react. But I do, again, want to particularly highlight how the United Kingdom's response was a U-turn on herd immunity, and the America's response, again, it's a gong show. I don't really know what their message is because there's so much competing information. Point 1 was pandemics. Have they happened before? Are they going to happen again? Yes. Point 2 was bureaucratic meltdowns. Is it a big conspiracy theory or is it just mistakes and randomness? It's mistakes and randomness. And to finish off, what are my views on conspiracy theories? Now, in general, I'm not going to answer specifically because there have been some really ridiculous conspiracy theories out there. Now, I'm not here to discuss whether it came from a lab or didn't come from a lab or came from a wet market or it's linked to 5G or not. I don't care, really. For me, the pandemic's here. It's similar to previous pandemics that have hit the human race. So it's not like it's something new. Yes, it is a new virus, but a pandemic hitting the human race is not something that the human race has never dealt with before. So let's just get on with it and deal with it. My perspective on conspiracy theories are they are people looking for some person to be at fault. Someone in the background, a group of nefarious people sitting on a boardroom somewhere in the world on some volcano skull-shaped island coordinating the downfall of the planet. I don't really believe that at all. I think that if you look at most conspiracy theories, the big ones out there, a lot of them actually can be linked to failures in bureaucracy and failures by humans. The last book I want to talk about is The Peter Principle. Now, the reason why I want to bring this book into it is it links in to bureaucracies and meltdowns. The Peter Principle basically means at some point in our careers, we will be moved into a job that we are not good at and we become incompetent at. We'll not get promoted out of that job. We might not be that bad that we get fired, but we'll end up making a lot of bad decisions and just kind of being mediocre in that role. Now, if we think about government and we think about agencies and then we think about people being promoted into positions of power, for every great leader and for every great doctor and for every great governor, there is just as many bad leaders, bad doctors and bad governors and people making bad decisions with the data that they've got. Not out of any fault of their own and not nefariously. They're just, according to the Peter Principle, they're at their level of incompetence and maybe the stress of the job and the stress of the situation forces them into making mistakes. This is my debunking of conspiracy theories. We live in a random universe. We live in a world where bureaucracies are slow moving, they're huge, and within those bureaucracies we have people in positions of power that might not necessarily have the skills to be in those positions of power, and then their decisions compounded on other bad decisions, compounded on other bad decisions, compounding on missteps and bad information and using data in the wrong way can cause meltdowns. Conspiracy theory? No. Bureaucratic meltdown? Yes. Let me know what you think about this video. A little bit different for this channel. It still leans into some of the business and organizational education that I've had to go through in my life, referring to things like Hofstadter's 6 Dimensions, which is a project management tool for culture and teams, through to the book Meltdown, which is actually linked to behavioral economics, which I've worked on before in different projects throughout my career. So this information was at hand for me. So when it came to sitting on the sidelines and watching this current pandemic and hearing and seeing the word conspiracy theory flood different social networks, I wanted to put my own opinion out there, not because I'm some guru or some smartass. It's because I've read a bunch of books and I've worked in a bunch of bureaucracies and I see mistakes every day. And unfortunately, mistakes on mistakes on mistakes on mistakes can lead to big disasters, and this is what's happening right now. Thanks very much for watching all the way through to this part of the video. I really do appreciate it. If you want to hit that like button for me and hit that subscribe button, that would be awesome. Hopefully, we'll see you in the next one. Make it a good one.